The main street of the town was crowded with people. Locals had gathered to catch a glimpse of Donald Trump's arrival, some watching from their windows, others lining the sidewalks. Supporters held signs, cheering, while the more curious townsfolk observed quietly. Children ran through the streets, and the elderly sat on their porches, watching everything unfold. This town had remained unchanged for years, but what was about to happen that day would be remembered for a long time. As Trump's motorcade moved slowly down the road, an elderly woman turned to her grandson with excitement. "Look, son. One of the most powerful men in America is here," she whispered. The young boy widened his eyes, stretching to get a better look at the man inside the sleek black vehicle. Inside the car, Trump glanced out, scanning the crowd, taking in the energy of the town. But suddenly, something shattered the moment, a piercing cry that tore through the air. It wasn't human. It was an animal. A horse. And it was in pain. Trump's expression changed instantly. He stopped mid-sentence and turned toward the window. The crowd fell silent, momentarily stunned by the sound. Some people exchanged glances, pretending not to hear it. But Trump wasn't the kind of man to ignore something like this. His face hardened as he turned to his driver. "What was that?" he asked. One of his advisors hesitated, clearly having heard the noise but unsure how to respond. "Probably just a stable nearby, Mr. Trump. In small towns like this, animals make noise sometimes." But Trump wasn't buying it. That wasn't just any sound, it was a cry of pain. His suspicion deepened. "Take me there," he ordered, his voice firm. His staff hesitated. His schedule was packed, and an unscheduled stop wasn't ideal. But Trump had already made up his mind. The townspeople watched in confusion. Everyone expected him to continue his planned itinerary, but he had suddenly decided to change course. For Trump, a rally or speech could wait. Right now, something else mattered more: the source of that desperate cry. Trump and his team followed the sound, heading toward the outskirts of town. They passed old houses and narrow dirt roads, moving further away from the main streets. Finally, they arrived at a small farm. But this was no ordinary farm. The fences were rusted, the barn doors barely held together, and the yard was littered with broken machinery and scraps. It was clear, this place had been neglected for a long time. However, the real horror was happening inside. As Trump stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. What he saw left him speechless. A frail, exhausted horse lay on the ground. It was trembling from weakness, struggling to breathe. It attempted to stand but collapsed again. And standing over it was a man, clearly the farm's owner, holding a thick wooden stick. He shouted angrily at the horse, hitting it repeatedly in frustration. Trump's eyes darkened with fury. He despised cruelty, especially towards those who couldn't defend themselves. Watching an innocent animal suffer was something he could not tolerate. He took a determined step forward and called out, "Hey!" His voice was sharp, commanding. The farmer froze, lowering his stick midair. He turned, his face twisting in surprise. He clearly hadn't expected to see Donald Trump standing in his yard. For a brief moment, the farmer hesitated. But then he shrugged, slamming the stick against the ground with a smirk. "This old thing is useless," he scoffed. "It won't get up. It's no good for anything anymore." Trump narrowed his eyes. The horse was gasping for air, its eyes empty, defeated. It had given up. Trump stepped forward. "And your solution is to beat it?" he asked coldly. The farmer shrugged. "What else am I supposed to do? Waste food on it? It's worthless now." Trump's jaw tightened. Unacceptable. He knew exactly what he had to do. "Sell me the horse," he said. The farmer laughed out loud. "You must be joking," he said, shaking his head. "What are you going to do with a broken-down old horse? It can't pull a cart, can't carry anything. It's useless." But Trump wasn't laughing. His eyes stayed locked on the farmer, his voice steady. "That's none of your concern. Name your price." The farmer hesitated, clearly caught off guard. Trump was serious. He scratched his chin, considering the situation. The horse was just a burden to him. If he could make some money off it, why not? "I don't know," he said, dragging out the words. "How about 10 grand? Trump shook his head immediately. We both know that's ridiculous. You're just trying to cash in because you see my name. The farmer grinned. He wasn't denying it. Trump crossed his arms. 5,000. Take it or leave it. The farmer hesitated. The horse was worthless to him. $5,000 wasn't bad for something he was planning to get rid of anyway. After a few moments, he sighed and extended his hand. Fine. 5,000. The horse is yours. Trump didn't hesitate. He turned to his security team. Make the payment. His voice was calm but firm. Then he turned back to the farmer, his expression deadly serious. But one condition. The farmer frowned. What's that? Trump stepped closer, his voice low but filled with authority. You will never, ever treat another animal like this again. For a moment, the farmer seemed to consider arguing. But when he met Trump's icy stare, he swallowed his words. He mumbled something under his breath and gave a stiff nod. Trump didn't need him to say it. He had made his point. Trump walked toward the farmer, his expression unreadable. The man's face shifted from annoyance to curiosity. He was confused. To him, this old horse was useless, nothing but dead weight. But now, one of the most powerful men in the world was standing in front of him, negotiating for it. Trump locked eyes with the farmer and took a deep breath before speaking. This horse worked for you for years. It carried loads, served you well. And now, just because it's old, this is how you treat it. His voice was firm, carrying both authority and disappointment. The farmer shifted uncomfortably but still tried to defend himself. That horse made me money, but now it's useless. What else can I do? Keeping it is just wasted money, he muttered with a shrug. Trump's jaw tightened. Taking another step closer, Trump kept his gaze fixed on the man. That animal gave you its best years. Don't you think it deserves something in return? Loyalty isn't just between people. Animals trust us, and how we treat them defines who we are. The farmer hesitated, something flickering in his eyes. No one had ever said something like that to him before. But still, the logical part of his mind focused on business. It's worthless to me now, he mumbled. Trump exhaled sharply. Then I have an offer for you, he said. Sell me the horse. The farmer let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Are you serious? What would you even do with this old thing? It can't work, it can't run. It's nothing but a burden. But Trump didn't flinch. His expression remained solid. I don't care about that, he replied firmly. I want it to live the rest of its life in peace. By now, the crowd had gathered closer, listening intently. The farmer's face twisted into an indecisive expression. On one hand, he saw an opportunity to get rid of a burden. On the other, he had a man offering to buy something he considered worthless. After a moment of silence, he took a deep breath and asked, How much are you offering? Trump didn't hesitate. He named a price. The amount made the farmer blink in surprise. He had expected to get nothing from the horse, yet here he was, being offered more than he could have imagined. After a brief moment of thought, he extended his hand. All right, the horse is yours. Trump gave a small nod and firmly shook the farmer's hand. The townspeople whispered amongst themselves, still processing what had just happened. Why would a man like Trump go out of his way for an old horse? As the money was handed over, Trump turned to the horse. Kneeling slightly, he gently placed a hand on its head and whispered, You're safe now. With the deal finalized, Trump instructed his team to arrange transportation for the horse. This wasn't something he had planned for when he arrived in town, but life had a way of putting him in the right place at the right time. Meanwhile, the crowd murmured amongst themselves. Some people nodded in admiration, while others scoffed, assuming it was just another political stunt. A local journalist quickly stepped forward, microphone in hand. Mr. Trump, why did you buy this horse? She asked, curiosity evident in her tone. Trump turned to her with a calm but powerful gaze. Because sometimes, the biggest acts of kindness start with the smallest decisions. Strength isn't about how tough you are, it's about having the heart to do what's right. His words rippled through the crowd, causing a noticeable shift in their expressions. Some people who had initially dismissed his actions now looked at him with newfound respect. As the horse was carefully led into the transport trailer, Trump turned back to the farmer one last time. "I hope this makes you think about how you treat your animals in the future," he said, his tone steady but not unkind. The farmer didn't respond immediately. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to argue, but instead, he simply nodded. Whether it was out of shame or reflection, no one could tell. And with that, the old horse was on its way to a better life, free from suffering. But for Trump, this wasn't just about the horse. He knew this story would spread, and its message would reach far beyond this small town. Because acts of kindness, no matter how small, always have a way of inspiring something greater. As Trump's motorcade moved through the narrow streets, his mind remained on the old horse. Even after getting into his car, the farmer's cold demeanor and the shocked expressions of the townspeople replayed in his mind. But most of all, he couldn't shake the image of the horse, its tired eyes, frail body, and broken spirit. Turning to his driver, he said firmly, "I want updates on the horse's condition every day. I need to make sure it's truly safe." His team wasted no time. A proper farm was arranged for the horse, a vet was called in, and the best care was planned for its recovery. But this wasn't just about the horse anymore. It had become a conversation that the entire town couldn't ignore. The next morning, the local newspapers ran the story. Headlines like, "Donald Trump's surprising move spends thousands on an old horse," spread across coffee shops and town markets. Some people admired the gesture, while others were skeptical. But one thing was clear, no one could ignore what had happened. Even after returning to New York, Trump couldn't stop thinking about the town. He received regular reports on the horse's recovery. The veterinarian confirmed that while the horse was frail, with the right care, it could regain its strength and live comfortably. Hearing this, Trump exhaled deeply. "We gave it a second chance. I just hope it finds peace for the rest of its life," he said to his staff. But this wasn't just about one horse anymore. His actions had sparked something bigger. The people in town started questioning how they treated their animals. Even local animal welfare groups were inspired by the event and began organizing awareness campaigns. For Trump, this was a reminder that even small acts of kindness could create ripples of change. But this story wasn't over yet. It didn't take long for the story to reach national news. Major networks debated Trump's decision. Some commentators praised his compassion, while others dismissed it as a publicity stunt. One television host scoffed, "So now Trump is rescuing horses? Is this genuine kindness or just another PR move?" But on social media, the response was very different. Most people respected what Trump had done. The hashtag #TrumpSavesAHorse quickly began trending on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thousands of users shared their thoughts. One user wrote, "No matter how powerful you are, if you lack compassion, you are nothing. Trump didn't just save a horse, he taught us all a lesson." Another commented, "If this was truly genuine, then respect to him. Standing against animal cruelty is something we should all support." The debates continued, but one thing was undeniable: this story had touched people. A few weeks later, Trump's team sent him the first pictures of the horse in its new home. It now roamed freely on a lush green farm, no longer burdened with work. It wasn't just a horse anymore, it was a symbol of Trump's promise. Watching the footage, a rare softness appeared in Trump's eyes. "This is it. Sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest actions," he murmured. Later, during a public speech, he addressed the story. "I saved a horse. But this isn't just about a horse. The real message is this: being strong isn't about winning, it's about having the heart to do what's right. If we have the power to change a life, we should." For a brief moment, both his supporters and critics paused to reflect. Because for once, this wasn't about politics. It was about humanity. And a story like that was impossible to forget.